me a verse or chorus, and I'll tell you which is which. Then I'll tell you that this form is called an octastitch. I'm pants at reading music, and I don't have perfect pitch. But when it comes to writing songs, I've got to scratch that itch. HFO goes live on air, we all expect a glitch. 'Cause every show I do, I know that I will find a hitch. I'm not expecting what I do to ever make me rich. I'm having fun with making music here right now with you on Twitch.
Good evening, one and all. Hello to Array of Emotions. Hello to Riako Music. It's Thursday, the 18th of March. Here we are again, show number 44 of my Thursday nights live streams. Riako Music says, "How are you feeling?" It's weird. I've actually, like all my friends who have had their first flu jab, have been wiped out by it. The French Doggy, hello to you, sir. I had my first shot on Tuesday at Bath Racecourse. I had Mike Tango Charlie, good evening to you, sir. I have met your challenge. Stay tuned and you will be amazed. But more on that in a minute. Yeah, I had my first AstraZeneca COVID shot on Tuesday. Number of friends had it either the day before or the day after. Poor old Ruth said, "How are you feeling afterwards?" I said, "I got up this morning at 8:30 when the alarm went off. I feel great." And she said, "Oh, I've just woken up after a 3-hour nap." So it laid her out flat. Laid out a number of neighbours of mine who said they felt really rough for a couple of days. Helen luckily got off a bit more lightly. She said she woke up with a headache and a bit fluey one day. Next day she was right as rain. But I actually I feel better now than I have done in several months. I was talking with someone online earlier and they said, So the thing is, people who get that sort of reaction to the first dose get clobbered by the second dose. And it was like, oh, thanks for that. So, yes. So how are we all? I hope you are all doing well. I hope you are all chipper and feeling great. Riako Music says, all is well. Been busy with VPC producing. Which is what's it stand for, Mel? I can never remember. Virtual Producer Challenge, something like that. Mel is doing a really, really, really challenging challenge, as challenges normally are. Atitlan, good evening. Hi all, back after a meltdown, don't ask. Got my COVID jab today. Vocalist Producer Challenge, says Riako Music. While you're all here, and as Nick's here, as Mike Tango Charlie's here, let's start off with a bit of fun, shall we? If you remember, on Sunday, Mike Tango Charlie was talking about sample rates and saying that, sample rates of 96k and 44.1 kilohertz and everything. He said, what would a piece of music sampled at 44 hertz sound like? And I can answer that question, Nick, because I'm going to play you one. So let's pick my theme tune, shall we? So if I take the WAV file of mission statement, which is what my opening tune is called, right? So it's on an audio file, audio track in Ableton. Oh God, the 1-bit challenge, says Nick. Exactly. So we will start at 16-bit, right? And we will start at a Redux, which is just a plugin that comes stock with Ableton, which I should have remembered anyway. I've got that set currently at 40 kilohertz, which is a bit lower than CD standard quality, and it sounds like this. You get the idea, right? Okay, the thing is that Redux lets you choose your sampling rate. So you see there it says 40 kilohertz. I can dial that down to 4 kilohertz. So, or near enough for government work. There you are, 3.99 kilohertz. So that's, in other words, being sampled 4,000 times a second rather than 44.1 thousand times a second. And this is what it sounds like if you do that. Which is kind of interesting because the guitar escapes relatively unscathed, but the vocals just disappear. Oh, the hissing, says Array of Emotions. The French Doggy says, could be useful if you want to mimic a radio. The thing that noise reminds me of are those cheesy greetings cards that play a tune at you when you open them, right? It's because the chip has to fit on something about the size of a coin battery. It's not going to have much memory in it. So the more you reduce the sampling rate, the less memory you need to use. Sorry, doorbell just rang. BRB. Well, this is for Mike Tango Charlie's benefit, so we will pause this for the moment. While Mike Tango Charlie is answering the door, let's give you some free stuff, because free stuff's always good, isn't it? So I have been exploring the freebies page on VST Buzz, which is the retail website where I got the Dynamic Hits sample library at the weekend for €9, and I have been having fun with it. It is very good. But I found out today there's also a free stuff page. So me being me, it's all about the free stuff. It was like, ooh, some of those look interesting. So the Sonatina Symphonic Orchestra. I got the Sonatina Choir. I really, really like the Sonatina Choir. And so I was very interested to see what they'd done with the Sonatina Symphonic Orchestra. It's its own plugin. You don't have to have contact or anything like that. Unfortunately, it's only a VST plugin, so unless you use some sort of bridge, it's not going to work on your Mac version of your DAW, but it will work in Windows. And I think it's about a gigabyte when I downloaded it. Oh, there you go, 654 megabytes. Okay, not quite a gigabyte. And here it is, dinky little plugin, which is split into strings and brass and various miscellaneous and then percussion, and then for good measure you even get a piano in it. And then once you've perhaps selected cello, as I have here, you then say, well, which articulation do I want? I think I'll have cello sustain, please. And then when you play it, it's rather splendid. I'm just demoing a free musical instrument that you can download from the VST Buzz site called Sonatina Orchestra. Attisland says UI isn't pretty, but it's functional. It's very functional, and for free for 650 megs, so it's about double the size of the Spitfire BBC Symphony Orchestra Discover package. But so I'm now immediately thinking of Pogleswood and small films and Oliver Postgate. But yes, so we'll come back to the Sonatina Orchestra in a minute. So Mike Tango Charlie says, was going to say that the earlier playback of your theme at a low bit rate sounded like one of those AI attempts at making music. Ooh, yes, not good. But we've only gone down to 4 kilohertz. So what happens if we go down to 440 hertz, right? So we've now dropped the sample rate still further by a factor of roughly 10. And this is what it sounds like. So we've pretty much lost every sort of tonal quality, and we've lost the melody, and you can't really tell what's going on at all. Mike Tango Charlie said, what's it sound like at 44 hertz then? So this is my theme tune at 44 hertz. And remember last Sunday I said, well, it'll probably sound like... I wasn't far off. The Ray of Emotion says, it's just static. I've had cars with faulty distributors that sounded more musical than that. So, yes, sampling at 44 hertz does not work. While we're here, because Mike Tango Charlie was saying telemetry, music from orbit. It's if you reduce the number of bits sampling. So if we go 8 bits, like old video games... Emotion says, oh, did you hear the sound from Mars? I did, didn't I? It's like, that's a nasty crunchy sound. It's like, I don't think that... I would imagine what's happened is that when the sky crane blew bits of grit all over the place, that something got in one of the wheels and got caught in the hubs, and it's now scritching. So yeah, they're a bit concerned, aren't they? So Atitlan says 8-bit 12 kilohertz is Fairlight, I think. Okay, let's do the 8-bit 12 kilohertz. So this is the Fairlight version of my song. And it's got that slightly nasal tinny ring to it.
Show me a verse or chorus and I'll tell you which is which.
And it really doesn't like sibilance, does it? So if we drop it down to 6 bits, what does 6 bits sound like at 40k? Atitlan says, doesn't like vocals at all. Yeah, the weird thing, that's really bugging me is the guitars just cruise through it.
And I'll tell you which is which. Then I'll tell you that this
so let's do 4 bits.
Called an octast
And suddenly it's Brian Bacon. One bit, anybody? Yeah, that's just... And 2 is just... Ew. That's really, really nasty. So, there we have it. That is me completely knackering my theme tune by crushing the life out of it. But bit crushing is used a lot for dramatic effect, because you heard what it did on cymbals and stuff. So it can do really odd things in an interesting way to certain types of music or certain types of instruments, but you're gonna kind of want the rest of your piece of music to be at a decent sample rate, because otherwise it's just going to sound horrible. Anyway, back to Sonatina Orchestra, which is a free musical instrument, which was available, there you go, on the VST Buzz freebies page. There's some really nice stuff in it. I haven't tried the piano yet. Let's try the piano, shall we? Right, so you just get piano. You don't get different articulations of piano. You just get piano. Oh, it's got a nice bit of not entirely concert standard feel to it. Also, not a great fan of the room noise on that. So let's drop it into the old standard supermassive and see if that helps things. Certainly at the high end it will. Now that's much better. I could use that. And it's I'm just turning into Vangelis. That's pretty, says Ryako Music. I like that. I like that. What are the timps like? Because you've got to have timps. I think we can probably dispense with the supermassive though. They're usable too, aren't they? For a free sample library, that's pretty darn good. What else have we got? Chimes. That sounds more like sort of bell tower to me. Mike Tango Charlie says, needs more reverb for Vangelis. Yeah, absolutely. So, chimes with reverb. Yeah, it's the Belfort, isn't it? Array of Emotion says, oh, it's the Belfry. It really is. Oh, now that's going to get used. Especially when it goes weird at the bottom end. Oh, it's Big Ben. How far? Yeah, there's nothing down there. Looks like the G below middle C is the lowest you get. Mike Tango Charlie says, the first ever Vangelis track I heard as a kid was the soundtrack to Gallipoli. See, you guys are from a different generation to me. I grew up as a teenager watching Cosmos on the BBC, which was Carl Sagan's version, not the Neil deGrasse Tyson version of it. The Cosmos, which Carl famously starts off in the main dining room at one of the big chamber colleges in Cambridge University. And the guy comes out and brings him a lovely plate of apple pie with ice cream. And Carl takes a spoonful and eats it, and then looks at the camera and goes, "To make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Thank you very much." And has another slice of pie. And Cosmos's main theme back then in the day was Vangelis. I think it was mainly albedo 0.39 with bits of spiral in it as well. Glorious stuff. Atitlan says albedo 0.39 was my first Vangelis. Was mine too, mate. And I was watching a YouTube video that somebody had shared on one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, and do track it down. It's basically Vangelis performing an entire symphony live by himself. And, well, I've got the Korg M3. You know, that was one of the things he was using, but the floor underneath the keyboards he was using was just this semicircle of expression pedals. It's insane. And he just does a complete symphony orchestra. And you think, oh, right, okay, so from now on, when he's composing for a film, he's just going to sit down and just play what he's watching on the film. And it'll be, right, yeah, done. And score a complete movie in like the playback time of the movie. It is worth checking out. It's really astonishing. But a lot of it was down to a particular really, really clever, really, really weird synthesizer module, which has like drums on them that look like some form of coding machine. And you spin the drums round, and you can write on each strip of paper on these drums what each button makes the thing do. And Vangelis wasn't using labels, he was just hieroglyphs or runes, probably. It's astonishing. Do check it out. When I put this on YouTube, as if by magic, a little caption will appear right now about the YouTube link, and I'll put the YouTube link in the show links on the YouTube video as well, because it's just astonishing. So do check that out. So yes, Sonatina Chimes, Sonatina Orchestra, 650 odd megabytes, and it's yours for nothing. But I went through some of the other stuff as well, and some of them I've got. Okay, so if you haven't got Piano in 162, I've talked about that on the show before. It is a big download. Yeah, it's 5 gigabytes, but it's available in the Sforzando player, and Sforzando is another free sample player. You do not need the full version of Contact, but I'm using the Contact version of it. It's an insanely good piano. Highly recommend that. So the cinematic elements there was one of the things that I looked at. Okay, so yeah, another one for your collection. But then I came across the getting silly section, right? So there's a sound effects library for people making soundtracks to film, which is people being punched. Well, it's actually a punch bag being punched and kicked and then dropped on the floor. And it's like, yeah, no. There's a really, really good Trancy Ableton Suite sound set. So if we go back to Ableton, let's find myself an unused synth set. It's now in my user library, and it's called the Analog Instrument Rack. You get shed loads of really, really, really good synth leads, pads, soundscapes, the lot. It's really, really good. Let me find, there was one. Well, I mean, anything that's going to be called Atari Stab, you're going to want to have a play with, aren't you, really? So it's basically, it's detuned to a fifth, isn't it? Oh, I like that. So what else have we got? Let's swap out that one for Hyper Lead. I think that's the other one. Very translate. Yeah, the whole pack. Right. I mean, I think doesn't it actually say trance or something? Chill, ambient, and house. But yeah, it's a monster pack. Well, it's not monster because it actually downloaded really quickly because they're Ableton instruments. They're not samples. But let's have a look at that lead. Rev Motions just said Technotronics. And yeah, it's absolutely JD Pete's. So nice pizzicato. That's rather nice. Nice Jupiter 8 lead. Oh, yes. The French Doggy says, only compatible with Ableton because I love to use that synth. It spoke to me. Yes, sadly, it is purely for Ableton Live. Was done for Live 9, I think. So it's been kicking around for a while. But as you, yeah, it spoke to you. It definitely spoke to me. There are some fantastic sounds in it. Vintage Pro. The French Doggy says, it hurts so much. Yes, I'm playing it wrong so I don't get a Evolver pad. Ooh, that sounds like it could be good. And that's before I've even dropped Supermassive on it. What happens if we throw all the reverb at it? I mean, for free, that is nuts. I could make an entire album every month for the next year just working through the 70 presets on this. So once again, this is Ableton Suite sound set by Rob Lee Music. If you've got Live, then that's a must-have, I would have said. Quite extraordinary. What else, though? There was some really so silly stuff. This rather took my fancy, right? It's 3.5 megabytes. There's nothing to it. This is a contact instrument called the Mither. Literally, as I say, 3.5 megs. That's nothing. That's rather pretty. Riaka Music said, now you know how I feel when things aren't available for Mac. Ray of Emotion says, at least Ryako Music is coming over to the PC side soon. You will love it. Ray of Emotions has shared the spec of Ryako's new system with me, and it should be a bit of a beast, especially with that processor. So yeah, Mither 3.5 megs download, really good, limited range, and it does require contact, but rather splendid. And the other one, right, this is about as lo-fi as it gets, right? This is a guy stretching cling film over a mixing bowl and then creating a contact instrument out of it. And it's bloody good. So I reiterate, that is a mixing bowl with cling film stretched over it. And with Supermassive. That's got lovely grunt to it. So that one is, if we go back, this one here, cling film frame drums. Multiple hits of cling film over a bowl with dinner's leftovers still in it. I love that. So that's by Clark Abode, who's from down under in Australia. Well done, Clark. That is rather splendid. Rev Emotion says, that is like those YouTube videos I get recommended that I've never clicked on. Mike Tango Charlie says, suggested name from next album, Drink from Human Tears. Well, yes. So Mel asked earlier, and I did spot it. She said, how was the curry? Because I've been fortifying myself today. I do a really big, and I mean seriously big, vat of either curry or chili or something of that ilk about once every 3 months, and then freeze. Well, I got 10 servings out of tonight's cook-off, but it was good. Had quite a zing to it because I couldn't decide whether I was going to use bird's eye chilies or the big fat short red chilies. So I thought, I'll just put both packets in, and also put in quite a few teaspoons of hot chili powder, paprika, and some hot curry powder as well. And yeah, it was tasty. 2 entire bulbs of garlic, a handful, and I mean a handful, that size handful of shredded fresh ginger. And yeah, it was really, really good. Ryako Music says, how long do you cook your curry? Well, put it like this, I let the onions caramelize for 50 minutes. Don't believe these cookery books that say caramelize your onions for 5 minutes. Ain't gonna happen. I could probably have let them go for another 15 minutes on top of that, but yeah, so caramelized for about 50 minutes to an hour. And then I think that took me to 3 o'clock, and I sat down to eat the results at about 4:30. So about an hour and a half plus caramelizing the onions. So about 2.5 hours. Mike Tango Charlie says, my mum is growing various varieties of garlic on our land back in Tassie. It's quite a lucrative crop. I love garlic, and I've been down, is it Highway 5? Is it 5 or 1 in California? Mel will be able to tell me. Going through Gilroy, which is just south of San Francisco, and Gilroy markets itself as the garlic growing capital of the world. I mean, San Francisco has a restaurant. In fact, I think they may even have expanded to 2 restaurants now. I'm not sure, but I've never been to it, and it's on my bucket list. There is a restaurant in San Francisco called the Stinking Rose, and every single dish on the menu, from the starters to the ice cream, has garlic in it. Oh my word. You can, I mean, finding the restaurant's easy, because you just go, it's that way. So so I had a really good and productive afternoon cooking, but I have been doing musical stuff as well. So remember I said about the Godin last week that the Godin needed a bit of tender loving care because it had been neglected a bit. And Riaka Music says Gilroy has a garlic festival. Mike Tango Charlie says garlic ice cream, oh my. Right, if Gilroy has a garlic festival, that's another one on the bucket list when we ever, if manage to travel internationally again. That, yeah, gotta be done. Yeah, the Godin, I took it down and gave it a restring, and to my shame, I have to admit, it's the first time that the Godin has ever been restrung since I bought it, because it had really, really heavy strings on it, and heavy strings are like, you know, immortal. It's why you don't change your bass strings as regularly as you change your guitar strings. But it also has really, I'll show you, right. This beastie has really, really odd tuners. So I don't know if you can see, but these bits here are how the Godin technological geniuses handle the fact that this is a locking tremolo without a set of Allen keys and clamps across the nut. And I had absolutely no idea how they worked, so I was scared of them, and that's why it's taken me until this week to go online and look at how do you put new strings on this? How do you get strings off the Godin? It's still in tune. They just twist off. It was that simple, and you literally put the string through the tuning peg, drop the twist on cap back on, tighten it up, and it's locked in. So you don't... For those of you, right, who've never tuned an electric guitar, which has steel strings under significant tension, then there is always, at the back of your mind, when you start tightening the strings up, the worry that the string you're tightening up is going to fail and snap, at which point the string, like, you know, the horror movies where the cables break loose and cut somebody in half, it's that kind of horror movie deal, right? Raka Music says, I've done that. Mike Tango Charlie says, and cut your head off. Yes, that is the fear. The stick has a high-end string, which is a 007. So, I mean, most guitarists play, you know, like Super Slinkies, the Ernie Balls, purple set of electric guitar strings, and the top end is a 9. The Godin had 11s on it, so I had to sort of fudge the bridge a bit, because when you put lighter strings on, things change and react, and the intonation goes off a bit. But it's fine, it's cool, and it's happy. So every time, especially with that top E string, which is a 009, you're always worried that it's going to snap or it's going to come loose and it's just going to cut you. And with the stick has actually bitten me in the past, because when I was tightening a new set of strings, when I think the first time I restrung the stick, the 007 string snapped, and it just laid all four fingers wide open all the way across, just clean cut all the way across. So it's like I have issues with stringing guitars with light strings, although I do play Super Slinkies or the Rotosound with a 9 top. Reactor Music says, I've done that, but I got lucky and it flew across the room. Mythbusters did a can you actually get cut in half by a snapped wire myth? They couldn't get it to work. Mike Tango Charlie says, that's a good thing, right? I just, yeah, I don't even want to go there. But when I first had guitars, I had maple neck guitars with varnished fingerboards. The Godin has, I think it's an ebony fingerboard, and this beastie has a rosewood fingerboard. And I was playing this today and I noticed, that rosewood's getting a bit pale and the intonation's going off on this. So restrung the Godin on Monday, restrung this today, and in both cases with the Godin and the GNL, I dug out my I don't know if you can see that, my little jar or tin of fingerboard oil. So it's basically linseed oil with lemongrass and a whole bunch of other stuff. And Z Coop was being a bit churlish about, why on earth would you pay money for a tiny little box like that? And it's like, hello, it was £3.95 from Chappell's, and that was in 1991, and I'm still using it. But the Godin, the ebony's quite dense, right? It didn't need a lot. And when I wiped off the oil, the amount of nickel from, I'm guessing primarily the strings, but also possibly the frets. Yeah, I reckon the GNL took a good 2 thimblefuls. So round about 5-10 mil of oil, and it just sort of went into the fingerboard. And if I switch to my Instagram page, and you can see in close up just how gorgeous it looks now. It really, really did come up a treat, and it sounds really, really splendid. So I am very, very pleased with that. And there's nothing finer, really, than playing a guitar with a brand new set of strings on it. Once they've settled down, at least. Because, some guitars, you tune them and it's like, right, gone, done, that's it, and you're away. Other guitars, they take a while to settle down. It's especially when, they're a bit like me when they're showing their age, I guess. And they don't always take to a new set of strings immediately. And the way the strings get wound on the tuning peg, that's one of the reasons why I like the Fly, because the Fly has, and again, see, these are all different ways. What they're trying to avoid, right? What all of these guitars are trying to do is to do what the first set of locking tremolo systems did when they came out back in the 1980s, which was the Carla tremolo system, where you had to cut a massive hole out of the guitar to drop this huge chunk of metal into the guitar. And that's why Dave Gilmour's Black Strat has a rather obvious seam behind the tremolo bridge on his Fender Strat that he sold at auction last year. because Phil Taylor, his guitar tech, routed it out and put a Carla tremolo in the early 80s. And Gilmour fairly rapidly went, no, I don't like that. Let's go back to the standard Stratocaster bridge. So they had to put a new piece of wood in, paint it over black, and then put a new bridge in over the top of it. A Rave Emotion says, hey, my guitar plays the same note around the frets 18 to 20 on the first, second and third string. What happens with locking tremolos is that the innovation was that bit, which is a bunch of clamps that are tightened on the strings by Allen keys. So I could twiddle the tuning knobs on this Ibanez and they would have no effect. But because when you tune it, you now have to tune it using all this jiggery pokery down at the bottom end. So it's very, very complicated. But my goodness, the difference in being able to dive bomb, in other words, push the tremolo so that the strings literally go slack and then bring it back up and it will be still in tune. You can't do that with an old school Strat. So Floyd Rose and the rest patented the locking nut system. So all the other guitar manufacturers had to come up with other ways of doing it. So with Godin, there's literally a screw that clamps down on the string going through the tuning peg that you screw down onto it. The Fly does it from the back of the neck instead. So you can see it's got, you tune it with that, but you fix and release the strings with a second wheel there. And what it means is that you can literally just put the string through and you don't have to faff around with winding it with a tuning winder over and over and over to get it to stick, because it's stuck, because it's clamped. So I love restringing the Fly because it is so easy, because you just put the string through, tighten up the clamp, cut off the remainder of the string and then tune it. Job's a good one. Absolutely mad. A Rev Emotion says, I think there's one fret that maybe sticks up a bit. Right. I would suggest that says to me that your action might be too low rather than too high, because if I draw it, so what's happening if you're trying to play something on the 18th fret, the 20th fret's getting in the way. So tripod like that. So if you're holding your fret down there, because your action's so low, it's getting trapped on the 20th fret, and if your pickups are down there, then that's the point of contact. So it doesn't matter what you're doing down here. If the string's too low, then that's where the contact will be. So it's only this part. So there's your bridge. It's only this part of the string that's going to oscillate. So I would imagine that's what's happening. So your action might be a bit low. If it's buzzy, if occasionally when you play a note and you can hear the neck going zzz with a string on a different fret, then again, that's usually a sign that the action's too low and you might want to get somebody to raise the action for you. So you don't want to mess it up by adjusting something and getting it wrong, because that way can turn out to be very expensive and you may sometime need a different guitar instead. Right, let's just see if my tripod cam... Again, I'm loving these lights. The difference in skin tone when I was editing the Sunday night show and not having the overhead light on, so the old Bonds isn't reflecting massive amounts of glare anymore. My goodness, what a difference. You know, this looks kind of the colour that I am, and the face of my orange monster, that's about the right colour it is. And same goes for the shelf cam. You know, I just really think that was 30 quid well spent, these lights. They really were. I can't remember what make they were, otherwise I'd plug them, but they were very, very cheap. Mike Tango Charlie says, I can't stand overhead lighting. Wobby123 says, good evening. Good evening, Wobby. Hope you are well. Yes, we are talking guitars, and Array of Emotions has a buzzy guitar that is playing what it wants to play rather than what Array of Emotions wants it to play. And we think we have a theory that it's probably because the action needs raising. Mike Tango Charlie says, we rebelled. Oh, Mike Tango Charlie says, our edit suites at work were originally fitted out with overhead fluorescence. Oh, we rebelled and said, no way. Raka Music says, I hate overhead fluorescent lights. I frankly hate fluorescent lights in general. It's a horrible light quality. It just really is. And all right, the energy saving bulbs, they're better than they were 10 years ago, but they're still not particularly great. I rather like because I've got a ring light here. If we go to Studio Cam, I don't know if it's actually, no, it's not visible. But yeah, I have the little Neewer 14-inch ring light with the warm and the blue LEDs in it. And once I started doing this with the lights behind me, I turned off the blue on the ring light completely. And as you can see, I look more like me as a result, because with the main lights on, I was looking a bit washed out. But turn those off and the fisheye goes into infrared mode, and we're back with Ghostwatch. And after our discussion on Sunday about Ghostwatch, the Michael Parkinson show was broadcast on Halloween 1992, and the other presenters I'd completely forgotten. So it was Mike Smith and Sarah Green. So Mike Smith was a Radio 1 DJ, Sarah Green was a Blue Peter presenter. They were a couple. I used to see them. For some reason, my friends and I, our social club ended up being the bar at the Churchill Theatre in Bromley on most weeknight evenings. And Mike Smith and Sarah Green would quite often be in there. But it was them. Craig Charles from Red Dwarf pops up as a roving reporter for one point. And the BBC have never rebroadcast it. So, of course, after last Sunday's show and editing it down and summarising that information on the YouTube thing, I thought, I wonder if it's on DVD. The BFI released a 10th anniversary version of it in 2002, but you cannot get hold of copies of it. But 101 Films brought out a DVD of it for the princely sum of £9.95. So I will be watching that this weekend because I got myself a copy. I hate fluorescent lights, which is, and apart from anything else, it's more restful without the glare of the main light on. And I'm still really a big fan of orange and teal. I know it's a cliche. I know that I've ranted about it, and the fact that the Spider-Man movie trailer was literally just every shot had been turned into orange and teal. But yeah, looks rather nice, doesn't it? As I reported in last Sunday's show, if I go over to Native Access, so FM8 and Massive both have new versions. However, one of the things that they've done with the new version of FM8 is that they've removed the 32-bit plugin targets on Windows. They have not told Native Access this, which is why there is now a repair flag on FM8. And there is also a repair flag on Massive, right? Same thing. What they've done is they've removed the 32-bit plugin targets on Windows because everybody's going 64-bit, right? That's fair enough, but when you click on repair, it's telling you that it wants to find the 32-bit VST plugins that it's just removed. And if you try relocating them, it just says, oh, well, that directory doesn't exist anymore. Have you moved them? It's like, no, I haven't done anything, Native Access. That's what you just did 5 minutes ago. And to be honest, reinstalling isn't going to do anything to it because the problem still exists. Because Native Access will not be able to find the 32-bit VST plugins because it removed them. And that is the same thing that happens on FM8. So it's now, 2 weeks since I submitted a support ticket? Crickets. Haven't heard a thing. So I don't know. I've looked on the Native Instruments forums. Nobody else is talking about this as being an issue. So I'm guessing that what's happened is that Native Access has buggered up its user interface. But who knows? But it's annoying. And the fact that I've just had no response at all from Native Instruments. And I know they've got a lot of stuff on their plate at the moment, but it would be nice to just have an acknowledgement. Yeah, that's a problem. We'll fix it. And the chat is still on Ghostwatch. Mike Tango Charlie says, really, I found it creepy AF. Ryako says, I was bored by the Blair Witch project when I first saw it. It relied on the camcorder gimmick, says Wobby. I didn't find it scary. Video cameras were a novelty then still. Mike Tango Charlie says, I think any gimmick is effective the first time you see it in use until it becomes a cliche. I do actually still have somewhere downstairs a mini DV camcorder that does do night vision. And it is, as a occasional thing, it's an interesting look. But as with all of these paranormal movies, just the actual presentation of a show in night vision changes your expectations of what it is that you are going to experience. I mean, if I turn the lights off, let's see if I can do it. Yeah, so the whole thing with the eyes, so the LEDs for the night vision are around the fisheye camera. So my retinas are reflecting back the infrared signal from the LEDs around the camera. Switching to black and white like that just has connotations. And as Array of Motions says, how freaky would it be if we saw something in Headfirst Only's door frame all of a sudden? Yeah, exactly. So last Halloween we did the Ghostbusters live stream. So maybe next Halloween we do the Ghost Watch version of it with a ghostly Ziltoid. Who knows? Reverb Motion says something to do on Halloween. Reactor Music says co-host or co-ghost. Oh. Yes, very good, Mel. Very good indeed. Mike Tango Charlie says, I'm not a horror movie enthusiast ever since I spent an afternoon with my friends from primary school and they decided to watch Children of the Corn. Children of the Corn is not material that primary school children should be watching, even if it has got Linda Hamilton in it. Dear goodness me. What was the first? I think when I was 17 or 18 and I discovered the Scala Cinema back in the days when the Scala was in Soho. It later relocated to around the King's Cross area and made rather a name for itself effectively doing Mystery Science Theatre 3000 shows. They had Michael Medved, who had just done a TV show on the worst movies ever made, and I went along to a triple bill. I kid you not, a triple bill of Glen or Glenda, Wild Women of Wongo, and Plan 9 from Outer Space, all of which introduced, and a lecture was given by Michael Medved about the background and how it came, or how each film came to be made, where it was made, what it was made with, and how much money, which was none. Reverb Motion says, I knew you were going to say Plan 9. Hey, it's really weird. It's all linked. You remember I was saying about the Flying Saucer books? And I bought the Gray Barker. They knew. In fact, it is literally. Gray Barker was a movie distributor, and he writes like his book is a 50s B movie poster. It's terrible. And his book was called They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers. And that is primarily the story of a guy who was editing his own Flying Saucer newsletter, a guy called Alfred Bender. And I'm just reading Bender's own account of his experiences. And, oh dear, because, well, credulous is probably a good word to pick. Because, and this is why I've started talking about it, you know, in Plan 9 has like framing presentations at the beginning and the end by Criswell, the seer. Okay? That wasn't a character created for the purposes of Plan 9 from Outer Space, right? Criswell was the Derek Acora of his day. He was the who was the woman who used to do horoscopes on the morning television show. But yeah, Criswell was a real person. That was his shtick. He's not acting. He's not ironically being a terrible actor. That was just Criswell. And I'm about 8 chapters into Alfred Bender's book, and who has shown up as one of the contacts who helped them promote their Flying Saucer organisation? Criswell. And it's like the Bender's going, oh, he was really helpful. He knew an awful lot of stuff. Really, really interesting guy. And it's like, okay. Mike Tango Charlie says, how do you do that with your voice? Scott Pilgrim reference, indeed. Reactor Music says, who? Mike Tango Charlie says, I don't like to think myself as credulous because I work in news, but if a movie starts with based on actual events, then I'm automatically like, ooh. Yeah, I'm old and cynical, and my reaction is usually to laugh bitterly and then mutter, yeah, right. But, yeah, your mileage may vary. You would like Dan Brown then. My brother bought me the hardback of the Da Vinci Code. I have actually read the Da Vinci Code, and it was very hard not to throw the book across the room. I have never read a book, a work of fiction that was so terribly badly written and a complete rip-off of the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, basically, to the point that one of the characters is actually an anagram of the names of the authors of the people who wrote the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, and they sued him for plagiarism and lost. So, yeah, one can only assume, therefore, that Mr. Brown has contacts with whom it is best not to tangle. Mike Tango Charlie says, I read the Da Vinci Code and I didn't hate it. Please forgive me. Rover Motion says, I don't know which one I hated more, the Da Vinci Code or that first book of the Millennium series. Ryaka Music says, how did they lose? That is only one case that had me raising my eyebrows. There are a number of artworks by the English painter, graphics artist Roger Dean, who paints all the Yes album covers, all the things with the floaty islands and the waterfalls and the weird sort of twisty bits of landscape, right? And when I saw James Cameron's movie Avatar, which has floaty islands and waterfalls and huge twisty landscapes, I thought to myself, they owe Roger Dean more than a few beers as a result of this, because it is blatant plagiarism. And Roger Dean agreed and sued for plagiarism and lost. Racco Music says, haven't seen Avatar. We are expecting at some indeterminate point in the future, because it was supposed to be a couple of years ago, Avatar 2 and Avatar 3 and Avatar 4 and Avatar 5. And I think there are rumours of Avatar 6 and 7. Avatar 2 apparently is going to be computer graphics but underwater. And Mike Tango Charlie says, it's not that bad. It is basically Pocahontas in outer space. The motion capture technology and the giant blue 8-foot high version of Sigourney Weaver is just, it's like, well, you just accept it, as Sigourney Weaver has suddenly become giant blue 8-foot tall Sigourney Weaver, but she's still very, very, very recognisably Sigourney Weaver. Ryaka Music says, is Avatar worth watching? It's hokey as hell. It's utter cheese, but it looks fantastic, and I still maintain they owe Roger Dean an awful lot more than a few beers. Wobby123 just says no. It's, yeah, as a story, it's pants. In terms of logic, adherence to science, or just anything else regarding drama or narrative or plot or writing, then it's like, are we there yet? But from the technology point of view, the fact of creating an entire virtual landscape and doing it convincingly, and creating virtual or alien people and doing them convincing, convincingly. It is astonishingly good. But put it like this: the plot, forget it. They kill off 2 characters in the first movie who are returning for Avatar 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever else. So it's like, well, yeah, this is basically it's the cinematic equivalent of Lost. It's a nice idea and it's pretty to look at, but if you start thinking about what's going on, you're just going to go, oh dear. Atitland 66 says, it looks great, but it's a cookie cutter Hollywood storyline. It really is. Mike Tango Charlie, the story behind the movie is more interesting than the movie. Mike Tango Charlie says, I'm curious if these sequels will ever get made. I believe principal photography on 2 is finished. Could be wrong. But then, because it's like the rest of the world has moved on from 3D, I believe James Cameron has some new invention that is going to make us all want 3D again. And having said that, I saw the first Avatar in 3D and it was worth seeing in 3D most of the time. So the thing with 3D, right, is that when you focus on something that's there, you can see my eyes have moved, right? And when I'm looking at you out there in internet land, my eyes have stopped pointing like that and are now pointing like that. And on the screen for Avatar, there are bits where Sam Worthington, basically wakes up after being in hypersleep when the really, really slick, really, really cool looking starship arrives at wherever it is that Avatar takes place. Can't even remember. That's how much attention the plot is worth paying attention to. But Sam Worthington looks at a droplet of spittle that's floating in zero gravity in front of his face, and then the focus pulls from the drop of spittle, which is obviously computer graphics, to him. And that scene epitomizes what's known as the convergence problem, and that's what makes people ill when they watch 3D movies, because your eyes are focused on the cinema screen. They are not moving to change the focus on the blob of spittle and then onto Sam Worthington's face. You are only using your eyes at one focal length. And when directors play about with pulling focus in 3D movies, that's what makes people sick, because people are getting visual cues as if they've moved their eyes, so that their eyes are converging on something that's a lot closer to the lens. But their body is saying, no, your eyes haven't moved. And for a lot of people, that makes them profoundly sick. And there is, short of producing movies in a virtual, well, not a virtual, it would have to be a physical space that would allow for your own eye convergence to pick where your focal length is, but that's giving control of the point of focus of the movie to you, not the film director. And can you imagine any film director wanting to give that up? As Atitlan says, there is no point in 3D until you go full. You can't even do it in VR. VR goggles are exactly the same problem, because the VR image is there, right? So each lens is helping you focus on something that close in your VR goggles, but your eyes are at one particular focal length. They are not converging. And yeah, I don't see how you can get past that. there have been various technologies that I've seen initial public offering papers saying our company's going to do this and we've fixed the convergence problem. And the last one of those that I saw was 10 years ago and still hasn't happened. Wobby123 says, I tried playing Doom back in the day and got really travel sick really quickly. Yeah. Mike Tango Charlie says, it would have to be like a flight simulator with a collimated display. Well, if everything is off in the distance, so that effectively you're focusing on the window pane of your aeroplane and everything beyond that is just all in the same plane of focus, then that's fine. And Atitlan66 says, Elite in VR is really something. And that's exactly the thing. You're not really looking at anything much close. Certainly not like Sam Worthington does in Avatar, where it's literally about 6 inches off his nose. You're looking at stuff that's at least arm's length or further. And the further away from you the object is, the happier your vision system is with dealing with it in virtual reality or on a 3D movie. Reverb Motion says, to date, I have not had the opportunity to try VR, but I suspect I will be vomiting in 30 seconds. I had a go on Oculus Rift back when I was lecturing at UWE, and for a start, I had to take my glasses off. So that was me buggered. But from what I could see of it, it was very, very convincing. All right, the other problem that people have is the lag. So you move and it takes the computer milliseconds to catch up. It's like latency in DAWs. You know, you're doing something and you're playing the note on the keyboard. But when I hit the key, if there's more than about 10 milliseconds delay in terms of me hitting the key on the MIDI controller and Ableton playing the sample, then you get disconnected. And that's probably why I still like playing guitar and bass and stuff rather than virtual instruments actually within Ableton. And synthesizers, you know, the synths that I've got here, you hit the key and it makes the noise. So he said, sliding up the fader, there's no lag. You know, if I was playing a note and then it was, then I'd be wanting my money back, I think. Like Tango Charlie says, honestly, I have never found a problem with lag or latency. Maybe I was lucky. Rave Emotions, I really had to hold back the bath during a Disney 3D ride. Oh my goodness. Atitlan says, it's when the focus moves inside the gap of eye to screen. Yeah. It's known as the convergence problem. You can Google it. It is a big stopping point in vision systems or 3D systems. There are a number of companies who are working on volumetric three-dimensional displays. And so, you know, the bit in the Death Star plans that Mon Mothma is showing to Luke and Han and everybody at the beginning, or the beginning of the end bit of Star Wars, and they've got a big table and the Death Star's just a bunch of dots whirling round above the table. Well, there are companies now who are, not only are they beginning to produce stuff that will actually let that happen for real, but if you poked one of the dots, you could feel it, because they're using ultrasound to give haptic feedback on the displays. Now that is something that I wouldn't mind having in my living room, but I probably need a whole other living room to fit it in. Array of Emotion says, if the US Air Force can't fix it, nobody can. Light field cameras, says Mike Tango Charlie. No, that's something different. So light field cameras is basically weird ass technology where you take the photograph and you can then decide which plane of the photograph you want in focus. How that works, anybody's guess, but I've seen it done. It does work, but no, this volumetric 3D is very different. It is literally, because you have to shoot light beams onto something like a mist or smoke or something that reflects light, or that you somehow make something illuminate in the projection space. And crazy stuff. Array of Emotions. Light field cameras just let you refocus after you take the image. Yes, exactly. Mike Tango Charlie. I remember as a child thinking that holograms were going to be like something out of Star Wars. Would be cool if that was literally the first practical version. I am old, right? So I saw Star Wars when it came out in 1977, but not only that, I went to the Science Museum in Kensington in 1977 to see the Star Wars exhibition, and they had a big Perspex case with R2 and 3PO in it, but they also had a shitload of little 3x3 inch holographic captures of a lot of the principal props. And the R2 and 3PO is like, it's just a man in a suit, but the holograms was, oh wow, this is amazing. And you could move from side to side, and the X-Wing in the other side of the space, the other side of the hologram would actually move. And it was, I still remember that. Mike Tango Charlie says, Pepper's Ghost. No, these were genuine holographic photographs made with lasers, as Array of Emotions said. So, and holograms are weird because of the way that they are made. You can cut a hologram in two, and then each half of the hologram will still allow you to recreate the entire image. It will be slightly degraded in quality, but you can recreate an entire image from a hologram and cut it up, and then each individual hologram still has the same image. Mike Tango Charlie says, I was obsessed with lasers and holograms as a child. The first time I ever went to the Royal Institution in London, where they have the Christmas science lectures, was for a school event. They took us, and it was a lecture on holography. That was probably at about the same time that the Star Wars holograms came out, and it was one of the guys who'd made the Star Wars holograms, and he was basically saying how they were made. Fragments of a hologram rose, anyone, says Mike Tango Charlie. And yes, it was our glorious patron Mr. Gibson's birthday on Tuesday. So I hope he had a splendid day. But yeah, Pepper's Ghosts, the whole holographic 2-pack ain't no hologram. Pepper's Ghost is a theatre trick that dates back to the 19th century. So way before they had lasers. And the way it works is that you have a tilted sheet of glass on the front of the theatre, and there is a performer hidden from view in the orchestra pit or somewhere similar, who is illuminated, but the audience can't see him because he's in the orchestra pit, and the half-angled glass reflects him as if he was on the stage. And if you've rehearsed and done it properly, then you can actually have the ghost character moving around and interacting with the people who are really on the stage, but who are the other side of the big sheet of reflect. I mean, in the old days, they actually used to use, I think it was muslin cloth. I can't imagine they would have had a theatre-sized sheet of glass or, mirrored material across the entire stage, purely from the health and safety stuff. It's like horrendous. The same technology is what is used for the virtual 2-pack. It is what is used for the virtual Richard Burton. It is what is used for the Hatsune Miku Vocaloid computer graphics, K-pop and J-pop virtual stars. Idaru happens as a result of Pepper's Ghosts. And big shout out to Eruke Sounds, who has just followed me. And I have known Mr. Eruke Sounds since we were at primary school together. So hello, Paul. Good to see you. I did get your message and I will be replying to it. So, no worries. Mike Tango Charlie says, I remember reading an article about an artist who lived in rural New South Wales and made holograms with lasers. She had to wait until the horses in nearby paddocks stopped moving because otherwise the vibrations would spoil the image. My goodness me. Well, I guess, you're thinking, Rika says, hiya, Chris, this is awesome. Thank you, sir. Riaka Music says, like in that Sherlock episode. Exactly. Yes. You're dealing with interference between light sources, and what's the wavelength of light? It's nanometers, isn't it? It's tiny. So, any vibration that's going to move stuff nanometers is going to bugger up your interference patterns. So I can totally get that. Going back to South Kensington, when I was at Imperial, there was a guy who chucked... So Imperial College, right, South Kensington, it's around the back of the Science Museum and the Albert Hall. And there is a bell tower, St Mary's Bell Tower, I think it is, in Imperial College, which is 365 feet tall. So it is about the same height and weight size as a Saturn V rocket. So it's a fairly substantial thing made out of red brick, and you can go up and have a look, and very nice view of the west side of London and Knightsbridge, and you look over at Harrods and see how the other half live. And one of the guys in the year above me in the physics department basically glued a mirror on the side of the bell tower about 300 feet up, and then went back to the physics block and shone a laser at the mirror and then measured the amount of travel time, and he could detect with his laser bouncing off the mirror on the bell tower and coming back to him. He could detect when tube trains pulled into South Kensington tube station, which was about half a mile down the road. There's a very, very cool tunnel that you go from South Ken tube station up to the science museums that usually has like string quartets busking in it. It's really, really cool. But he could measure the tube trains pulling in and out of South Ken tube station because the bell tower would wobble backwards and forwards as a result of the tube trains going past. Mike Tango Charlie says, as I recall, most of her work took place in the witching hour when the world is still. When all the best work takes place, one has to say. Don't you agree? I do my best work in here certainly after sort of 7, 8 o'clock at night. And it is, a lot of it is down to the world being still, and you can just focus. And it's dark outside. It is very dark outside here at the moment. There are fewer distractions unless you're not a night owl. So Riaka Music says, nope, I'm the opposite. It's funny. There are times I've been working in here and thinking, ooh, it's getting a bit cold because the heating's gone off, and then I look at the clock and it's like, it's 2:30 in the morning. And I have to say, for those of you worrying about my neighbours with the Marshall stack out there in the back, that no, I do not use guitar amps late at night. In fact, I usually switch over to headphones after about 10 o'clock at night. To quote Arcade Fire, I need the darkness, someone please cut the lights, says Mike Tango Charlie. Reactor Music says, I do my best work in the day, usually starving. Yeah, the whole forgetting to eat thing, I think it just goes with the territory when you're playing with stuff like this. It really does. I do work during the day, and I really need to start streaming again. And that's kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about on the show tonight, because we've been going, oh crikey, I've been going 105 minutes or thereabouts. This week, because February album writing month obviously finished at the end of February, and there was a sort of 1-2 week period where I was polishing stuff up and re-recording stuff and obsessively re-recording guitars, and then brought out the my album on Bandcamp, because, did I mention, I have loads of stuff on my Bandcamp page. And when I'd finished putting together my my latest Bandcamp album, which strangely enough is called What I Did in February. So I picked 15 songs from February album writing month. Some of them, yeah, I was absolutely cool with. I just rendered them out as WAV files. Others, as I say, obsessively redid the guitar for about 50 takes and stuff like that. So it kept me occupied for a couple of weeks, right? That's the point I'm making. I had something I was focusing on. This week, I was thinking, oh, what am I going to be like after I've had my COVID shot? Am I going to be all over the place? Am I going to be falling asleep? Am I just going to be brain fog? So I didn't really have anything planned for this week. And more than that, I felt kind of that I needed to just take a break and step out from going, I've got 3 more songs for you this week, because after a while you guys are just going, enough, Chris, just take your foot off the gas for a week or so and chill. So that's kind of what I've been doing this week, but God, it's bugging me. It's like I'm twitchy. I come in here just to sort of sit down and go, right, I'm in the studio. I don't have to make music. So what am I going to do? I know I'll restring a guitar. So hence the Godin got restrung on Monday. Hence the GNL got restrung today. I think the cooking thing today, right? Making the, 5-litre pot of chicken curry today is me trying to distract myself from the fact that the producer / songwriter / musician in me is going, you're not doing anything regarding music. What are you playing at? Well, you're obviously not playing. Reactor Music says, I went shopping today and I walked a lot. I'm really missing writing music. So I think the February album writing month website is talking about 50/90, which starts on the 4th of July, and you have to write 50 songs in the 90 days between the 4th of July and the 1st of October. And people are now saying, well, we are now going to have 50/90, the prequel. And what that will be is that you write another 50 songs in the 90 days from the 4th of April to the 3rd of July. So effectively it's no longer 50/90, it's 100, 180. Mike Tango Charlie says, there's that voice again. Yeah, if you weren't asking ironically, then what it is, is that on the mixer here, I have an effects send, and under the floor, I have a little pedal, like a guitar pedal, but it has XLR inputs because you kind of use XLRs on mics. And it's made by a company called TC Helicon. And Mike Tango Charlie says, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. And yeah, because Array of Emotions just calls him the wedding DJ voice, ladies and gentlemen. Check that out. Nobody will know, says Array of Emotions. So yes, TC Helicon, mic mechanic. It's basically does a whole string of stuff. So there's a de-esser in it, there's a compressor in it, there is a delay in it, there's a reverb in it, there is an auto-tune in it, which I literally do not use or just leave on the sort of 50-50 setting. Most of the processing takes place all the time, so the compression and the de-essing and everything else, which is why I sound so cool when I can do my voice over radio, chat radio, news radio, that sort of voice, ladies and gentlemen. And this is why Wobby got me to do the overnight radio voiceover for her track during 5090, which I really enjoyed doing. And obviously the Shure SM7B here does help tremendously as well. I think I am TC Helicon, and it's mic mechanic, MIC, and then mechanic. And it's literally a little red stomp box. And you plug your mic into it, and then you send the feed back into the desk, and then it goes from the desk into my audio interface, and then from the audio interface into my USB channel, into yada, yada, yada. But when Mel and I did the Form Over party at the Phoenix in 2015, good Lord, that was 6 years ago, I thought, well, if I am going to sort of just noodle on the guitar and sing, then I want some form of backup in terms of compression and general sweetening of my voice. And I bought this mic mechanic, and I don't use the delay on it when I'm recording vocals, but it has, thanks to Array of Emotions just latching onto it as being just his sort of thing, that it's become a staple part of the stream. And I've got to the point now where I don't even have to look down most of the time. I can just gently lapse into wedding DJ voice. And ladies and gentlemen, a big shout out to Wobby Wobby. So you're very welcome, says Array of Emotions. It's good fun. I have also, well, we were on the stream, I discovered time manipulation plugin in Ableton that makes me sound just like Marvin the Paranoid Android. So that's going to get an outing in 5090 or 180. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is I am really suffering with not focusing on making music, because quite frankly, the news in this country at the moment is increasingly appalling. The news from Atlanta this week has been appalling. It's like, I need something nice. I need to feel like I can make something that makes things nicer for people, not making it worse. And so I am definitely going to be doing the 180 challenge. So I will be writing 100 songs in the 180 days between April the 3rd and October the 1st. And we'll probably go mad as a result. But my goodness, I'm going to learn a lot about using the kit I've got. And somebody posted a quote, and it was a lovely quote. I can't remember who it was, whether it was on Facebook or on the February Album Writing Month forums, because somebody had said about the recording side of being a songwriter, and the response was, you should know your equipment inside and out. Absolutely every nut and bolt of every piece of kit that you've got, you should know backwards. You should be competent at mixing your material, and you should be okay at mastering. So that was the priority. It was all about learning to use your gear and looking after your gear. And again, that's kind of why I've been restringing the Godin, which has got loads of fingerprints over it now after I picked it up, so that will need a polish. But I will be restringing several other guitars. The Squier Telecaster, that one there, this one here, that definitely needs restringing, because that was the guitar that I'd used for the, was it 122nd Thoughts that I played you on Sunday? I said, well, I've redone all the guitars because it sounded a bit plonky. And unfortunately, it was the Squier. I mean, not casting nasturtiums on you, Squier Telecaster. You are a lovely guitar, and those Seymour Duncan designed P90s are rather splendid, but yeah, you've had the same set of strings on for about 18 months now, and I think it rather deserves a new set. The one guitar that is always a real bugger to restring is this, because the low string on this is a 96, and just that string costs a tenner. That's the difference between, you know, your £4.50 bag of Ernie Ball Super Slinkies and an extended range guitar that has, you know, this number of strings on it. Then you've got 6 strings for the top, like a normal guitar, but then you've got the B, the F sharp, and then the C sharp at the bottom, and the C sharp string. I mean, the thing is, like I was saying, you don't change bass strings as frequently as you do guitar strings, because there's a lot more to them, and they're a lot more robust, and they tend to hold their tune a lot more than guitar strings do, especially if you've got tremolo systems. But I think that one's probably got another good 6 months. I used to know a guy, and he was a bass player, and I don't think he'd ever restrung one of his bass guitars. Reverb Motion says, so do you just buy bass strings for those bottom strings? There is a supplier over in this country who will supply you with individual strings. So this is me box of strings, and I wanted to talk as well. So, I mean, like, it's not so much music tonight as it is music-related stuff. So, yeah, there you go. So that's just a set of rotor sound bass strings. So that's about 12 quid's worth for 4 strings. Whereas that's a set of guitar strings. So the tops are 9, remember I was saying? And the classic ones, the archetypal ones, the fluorescent pink Super Slinky, right? These are the ones I've been using Super Slinkies for years, but at our local guitar show, they were doing a rather nice box of 10 packs of rotor sound strings for a very silly price. So I bought those, and I've been using those. The most expensive strings set of those, I think I've got 2 sets left. No, I've got 1 set of stick strings left, so I will need to order a new set at some point. in the not too distant future. But to answer a Ray of Emotions original question, yeah, there you go. That's the B flat, the B sharp string. So I don't know if you can see that. That's a 90. That's interesting. Where's my 96s gone? Maybe I just decided that because it's such a massive string, I didn't need to replace it. Stranger things have happened. But if you've been following me on Instagram, you may have seen that. So when I bought the Marshall stack from Thin Lizzy Limited, after Thin Lizzy Limited were wound up, I picked it up from a warehouse in Paddington from Thin Lizzy's road manager, John Salter. And he said, "Oh, box of junk here, have this." And it was a massive wodge of individual Ernie Ball and Dean Markley strings. Riako Music says, "Are there any brands of strings that you won't buy? Are there some strings better than others?" It's personal taste. It really is. I just used Super Slinkies, the Ernie Balls, for years and really liked them. But I've become quite a convert to the Rotor Sound ones because they are rather good. But in amongst all of these guitar strings, and I spotted it back in the day when I was given all this stuff, there was an individual first string Dean Markley string packet, and there's writing on it that's Phil Lynnett's handwriting, that was literally the encore set list that he scribbled on the back of a packet of Dean Markley strings for one of Thin Lizzy's shows.
A bit of rock and roll history there, ladies and gentlemen. Thought you'd like that.
Could be wrong. Z Coop actually went online and said, "Yes, looks actually more like Scott Gorham's handwriting." I'll take that. That's from a good 40 years ago now, which is a terrifying thought. Riako was saying about strings. What I would say about the Roto Sound strings, which I really like, calling it back once again, so the whole thing with the light strings snapping and laying your fingers open. The Roto Sound strings, you get the E, the A, the D, the G, the B, and the E. But you get a seventh string, you get an extra 009 top string, just in case you break it. So and that's what that packet of Dean Markley strings gets used for now, is the spare top end strings that I've got from restringing the guitars. Ernie Balls are the bomb for me, says Aruka Sounds. Paul, do you use 9s or do you use heavier gauge strings? Because I've got mates who use 10s, and I've got somebody who uses a Roland guitar synth who swears by 11s because he says that the synth pickups can pick up the sound or the signal from the strings a lot more because there's more metal. It's going to create more of an impact on the magnetic field. I use regulars, says Aruke Sounds. Right, there you go. Because so Stevie Ray Vaughan used 12s, didn't he? I believe that is like, when you hard boiling an egg and you're doing a party and you want to slice the hard boiled egg and you have that thing, you lay the de-shelled hard boiled egg on a little sort of cup thing, and then you squish it down, and they're like the machines that they use for making sliced bread, right? And you do that with a hard boiled egg. I've tried playing a guitar with 12s on it, and it was like trying to play an egg slicer. A Reformation says, that sounds a bit like bullshit. It could be. This is a rather specific scenario, says Mike Tango Charlie. Yeah, I've tried nines. Well, I've gravitated to nines. I just like the feel of nines. I've tried tens. I even tried 11s on the Fender Telecaster there for a while, and it was like, oh goodness me, that's not pleasant. So went straight back to nines on that. But Billy Gibbons has a top end string of a 7. He plays phenomenally light strings and yet gets one of the most grotesquely heavy sounds out of any guitar that I've ever heard. So, yeah, I think Array of Emotions' theory is probably not far off the mark. But, yeah, whatever. I mean, good God. Thinking about what Stevie Ray Vaughan did on the guitar, and to do that with 12s is, yeah, he must have had no sense, no feeling in the tips of his fingers at all. I mean, I can stick pins into the ends of my fingers because of the state of the calluses that I've got on them, but goodness me. Larger diameter strings give a stronger signal, but 10 is as heavy as I can go for a first string. Riaka Music says, you're totally missing out, Mike Tango Charlie, who has never sliced an egg at a party. You are definitely missing out, mate. So we're back to the cookery. We are back to the cookery. But, yeah, focus. So I have decided I need the focus, so I am going to commit. I am going to go back into full-on songwriting mode, and I'm going to do the 100-180 challenge. And that has also led me to contemplate my songwriting tally, because at the end of February album writing month, I had come up with 817 songs that I've written. So I thought, if I'm going to be writing 100 songs this summer, that's 917, right? That's spitting distance of 1,000, really, isn't it? Can I write enough songs in the rest of this year to take me over to a list of 1,000 songs? I reckon I can. If you think about it, I've been averaging at least a dozen songs a month since I got the studio put together last October. So, I mean, how many months have we got? We've got nine months left in the year, haven't we? 9 dozen songs. That's going to get me not far off there. So, yeah, I think I might have a go. You could call the resulting album M. You could do it if you start writing grindcore. Well, I could do a lot of me 1 minute songs, couldn't I? Because I mean, a 1 minute song for me, that first 1 minute song took me an hour from start to finish, from writing the lyrics to coming up with the final result and uploading it to the February album writing months. So, I mean, if I did that, Riaka Music says, no, just take your time. I'm maybe my brain fog from the COVID shot is kicking in, because 1,000 minus 817 is not 123. Riaka Music says, don't kill yourself over an arbitrary number. Mike Tango Charlie says, all deadlines are arbitrary. I saw a wonderful animation yesterday from the lovely people at Big Finish. And I don't know if you're aware of Big Finish Productions, but they have basically taken over the franchise of audiobooks for things like Doctor Who. The latest thing that they have announced, a new Doctor... Well, it's not a new Doctor Who story. This is the mad thing about it, right? It's this. It's called the Doomsday Contract. And there is a relevance to this because the whole thing about deadlines, Douglas Adams used to be the script editor for Doctor Who back in the Tom Baker years. And at that time, Douglas had suddenly become very, very important because he'd just written a little piece of radio fun called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And suddenly he had an awful lot on his plate, but suddenly also he was going to become very, very rich. And at this time, he very famously was quoted as saying, "I love deadlines. I love the whooshing noise that they make as they fly by." He'd been contracted to write a piece of music. He'd been contracted to write a Doctor Who episode, which was called the Doomsday Contract. But he handed it off to John Lloyd, who was also involved in writing a lot of the material for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And yes, it's the John Lloyd from Quite Interesting. So, fairly bright lad. And yes, they've got Tom Baker and John Leeson as K9 and Lalla Ward as Romana and various other people, Nicholas Briggs, who is usually a Dalek. And it's rather splendid. But, and that's not it. I don't think this is it. There is a YouTube video of an explanation of what happened to this story that was John Lloyd wrote, but it was never actually made into a Doctor Who episode. And they did the explanation of the production using the graphic style that the original BBC television show of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy used in its 1979 incarnation. You know, the one with all the coloured, very, very basic graphics with all the text appearing just underneath it. I will track down the video for that and put it up on the show links. But that actually immortalises Douglas Adams's "I love deadlines" quote, as it all, as Mike Tango Charlie says, it was all hand drawn. It was pseudo CGI. It was CGI before people could actually do CGI. So it was all cell animation and painstakingly done by hand, and absolutely glorious. And I still love that original television series. And as Mike Tango Charlie says, time is an illusion. Lunchtime, doubly so. It's a Thursday. I never could get the hang of Thursdays. But I've been going on and on. I haven't even played you any music, for which I apologise. I will be back in a more productive frame of mind, I hope, next week. Yeah, I just need something to focus on. I need to come in here and actually sit down and make music and try and reassure myself that I am trying to make the world a little bit better than it was before I started making music. But for now, I will sign off. I will leave you, lovely people, whatever you're doing over the next few days, for the rest of the week, over the weekend, next week, next month, as time stretches in its infinitude off into the distance. Please obey social distancing rules. If you're going out, please wear a mask. I've been vaccinated. I will still be wearing a mask when I go out. Not that I go out very much. I will leave you with my best wishes and say, whatever you're doing, please stay safe, stay well, stay sane, and stay Wayne. Yeah, thank you very much for joining me. I will be back at 2100 GMT this Sunday night for another form show that I haven't really decided what the name of the show will be. So we'll just call it the Is It Form Yet show number 24. And I will be back here with Thursday live stream number 45 at 7:30 GMT next Thursday. But until then, have a lovely time. Stay well. Look after each other. Look after yourselves. Don't do anything too crazy. And I'll see you next time. Good night.